My daughter thought I was confused about my jewelry's value. The look on her face when I mentioned the $1 million sale was priceless. Her knuckles turned white around her water glass, that practiced smile frozen in place. You could almost hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how her senile old mother had outplayed her. Ever been betrayed by family? Comment below. Just moments before, I'd watched her walk into my dining room with that designer purse, the one she'd bought last month despite her supposed business troubles. The Gucci bag probably cost more than what she told me my grandmother's emerald necklace was worth. Funny how money problems never seemed to affect her shopping habits. She'd been lecturing me for 20 minutes about how elderly people often get confused about finances, how we don't understand modern markets, how we need protection from our own decisions. Each word dripped with fake concern while her eyes kept darting to my jewelry box on the sideboard. I gripped my teacup tighter, listening to her explain, for the third time that month, how I should let her help me sell my outdated jewelry collection before prices dropped even further. She never suspected I'd already sold the most valuable piece, or that I knew exactly what she was doing. After Robert died 2 years ago, I stayed in our family home despite everyone's suggestions to downsize. This place held 45 years of memories. The marks on the kitchen door frame showing our children's heights, the small crack in the living room window from Michael's baseball, the garden Robert and I planted together. I found comfort in these walls. My jewelry collection was similarly precious, not just for its monetary value, but for what each piece represented. The pearl earrings from our first anniversary, the ruby bracelet when David was born, the diamond pendant celebrating our 25th year together, and most valuable of all, the emerald necklace Robert gave me on our 30th anniversary, a family heirloom from his grandmother with stones the color of spring leaves. I first noticed Amanda's unusual interest in my jewelry about 3 months after the funeral. She mentioned security concerns and insurance costs while eyeing the pieces in my jewelry box. She suggested I might not want all that responsibility at my age. I smiled and thanked her for her concern, not missing how her gaze lingered on the emerald necklace. Sunday family dinners became our tradition after Robert passed. I'd cook pot roast or lasagna, Robert's favorites, and for a few hours, the empty chair at the table didn't seem so obvious. Amanda would arrive precisely at 5, sometimes with her husband Greg, sometimes alone. She never offered to help cook, but always criticized how I arranged the silverware. During one of these dinners, I returned from the kitchen to find Amanda photographing the contents of my jewelry box. "Just documenting for insurance purposes, Mom," she said without looking up. "You really should keep better records." I nodded agreeably, not mentioning the detailed appraisals Robert and I had secured years ago, safely stored in my desk drawer. That same evening, Amanda first mentioned selling the house. "It's so big for just one person, Mom. Think of the maintenance costs, the property taxes. Wouldn't you be happier in a nice little condo?" Her voice had that special tone, the one that manages to sound both concerned and condescending at once. That night, after everyone left, I sat in Robert's chair wondering if Amanda was right. Was I being stubborn and irrational? Robert always said I was the practical one in our marriage. He trusted me with our finances, our home, our future. Had grief clouded my judgment? I fell asleep there, surrounded by old photos and uneasy thoughts. The next morning, my neighbor Irene came by with a casserole and straight talk, her specialties since her own husband died 3 years earlier. Irene didn't bother with gentle suggestions or careful phrasing. "Don't let anyone rush you into anything," she said, placing the food in my refrigerator. "Especially family. They're the worst for thinking they know what's best for you." A week later, Amanda arrived unannounced with a man she introduced as Jonathan, a jewelry expert and old friend. I hadn't heard his name before, despite Amanda frequently listing her friends and their accomplishments. Jonathan barely made eye contact as he examined my collection, whistling disappointingly at each piece. "Costume at best," he said about my anniversary pearls. "Maybe a few $100s for the lot," he concluded with a shrug. Would you have suspected something was wrong? Let me know in the comments. I felt torn between trusting my daughter and trusting my own knowledge. Robert had been meticulous about investments, including my jewelry. The emerald necklace alone had come with documentation of provenance and value, papers I kept in my safety deposit box, along with other important documents. I remembered the night Robert gave me that necklace. Our 30th anniversary, a small restaurant in the city. He'd been unusually nervous, fumbling with the velvet box under the table. "This belonged to my grandmother, then my mother," he said. "The emeralds were sourced from Colombia in the 1880s. The setting is original Tiffany. It's worth a small fortune, but the real value is in its history. I wore it only on special occasions, treasuring its beauty and meaning." Now Amanda held that same necklace carelessly, dangling it while Jonathan examined it. "Pretty costume piece," he said, with another dismissive shrug. "These aren't real emeralds, probably just colored glass. Nice for dress-up, though." Amanda nodded knowingly, though I distinctly remembered her admiring its craftsmanship and value after Robert's funeral. While Jonathan continued his assessment, I noticed Amanda texting, a small smirk playing on her lips. She angled the phone away when she saw me looking. That was the moment the first serious doubt crept in, a cold feeling that settled in my stomach and wouldn't leave. Over coffee after Jonathan left, Amanda leaned forward urgently. "Mom, we should sell these pieces quickly before the market drops further. Jonathan has connections and can handle everything. No hassle for you." Her fingernails, freshly manicured with an expensive-looking design, tapped impatiently on my kitchen table. I began noticing other signs that contradicted Amanda's claims of financial struggles. The designer clothes, the new car, the expensive hair treatments. Meanwhile, every conversation circled back to my assets, the house, my savings, and especially my jewelry. She spoke as if their decline in value was inevitable, and only her intervention could salvage anything. The following week, I couldn't find my investment statements in their usual place in my desk. I eventually discovered them refiled in the wrong folder, several pages dog-eared. I hadn't moved them. The invasion felt worse than the prospective theft. Someone had been through my private papers, rearranging my life without permission. When Irene came by with another casserole, I finally voiced my concerns. The words sounded terrible spoken aloud, accusing my own daughter of attempted manipulation, possibly theft. But Irene didn't look shocked. "I saw her showing jewelry photos to a man at Westfield Cafe last week," Irene said matter-of-factly. "Didn't look like your expert friend." This man was taking notes, looking like he was calculating something. I thought it was odd, but didn't want to intrude. She patted my hand. "Trust your instincts, Eleanor. You've got good ones." That evening, Amanda left her purse behind after another financial planning visit. I'm not proud of looking through it, but fear overrode manners. Inside, I found printed estate planning documents, none that I had signed or even seen, with my jewelry itemized with values far higher than Jonathan had suggested, though still well below market. My hands shook as I quickly photographed the papers and returned them exactly as I'd found them. I barely slept that night. The weight of potential betrayal by my own child felt crushing. Was I misinterpreting innocent actions? Was grief making me paranoid? But the evidence kept mounting, impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence or concern. Amanda's suggestions grew bolder. "Mom, I've been thinking, why don't I help manage your finances? We could set up a joint account for simplicity. I could handle the bills, investments, everything. At your age, you shouldn't worry about these details." What Amanda didn't know, what Robert had always known, was that I had managed our household finances throughout our marriage. Robert made the money, but I invested it, grew it, protected it. He joked that his business succeeded because I handled the practical side of our life. The assumption that I was financially naive was both amusing and alarming. I began quietly documenting my belongings and securing important papers. I photographed each room, each valuable item. I changed passwords on accounts. I started a journal detailing every conversation with Amanda, noting inconsistencies and pressures, all without changing my outward behavior, still the agreeable, slightly confused widow she expected. My oldest son, Michael, called from Seattle that week. We spoke monthly, pleasant conversations that rarely delved deep. This time, though, he mentioned Amanda's recent visit to him. She was asking about Dad's life insurance, the house deed, your jewelry, he said carefully. Mentioned some financial concerns about you managing a loan. Is everything okay, Mom? The confirmation that Amanda's behavior wasn't just directed at me, but part of a larger strategy, solidified my resolve. I maintained my pleasant, slightly vague demeanor during her visits while methodically gathering evidence and safeguarding assets. I became a detective in my own home, watching for clues and inconsistencies. The next family dinner, Amanda brought Greg along. He made several uncomfortable jokes about elderly finances and senility setting in early, each one followed by forced laughter and Amanda's tight smile. I noticed their teenage daughter, Riley, looking increasingly embarrassed, avoiding eye contact with me. I decided to test a theory. Amanda, I've been thinking about selling that gold bangle, the one with the small diamonds. What was it Jonathan said it might be worth? I deliberately chose one of my less valuable pieces, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes lit up momentarily before she controlled her expression. Oh, not much, Mom. Barely worth the effort to sell. But I suppose every little bit helps. I can have Jonathan come by again. The calculated indifference confirmed my suspicions further. The next morning, I noticed something that chilled me. My jewelry box, though closed, had been subtly rearranged. The emerald necklace, which I always kept wrapped in a specific velvet pouch, was now directly visible when the lid was opened. The small camera I'd hidden on the bookshelf, a security measure that had felt excessive when I installed it, had captured Amanda entering my bedroom during a bathroom break at dinner. Irene proved invaluable during this time. Her art dealer background gave her connections I desperately needed. I know a legitimate appraiser, she said. Thomas won't breathe a word to anyone. We can meet at my house if you're worried about Amanda dropping by. Thomas confirmed what I already knew. My collection was worth substantially more than Jonathan had claimed. The emerald necklace alone, with its documented provenance and natural Colombian stones, was valued in the high six figures. In today's market, with vintage Tiffany pieces being highly sought after, it might even reach 7 figures at auction. I moved my most valuable pieces to a safe deposit box the next day, telling the bank manager I was concerned about home security. I left enough in my jewelry box to avoid suspicion. Costume pieces mixed with a few authentic but less valuable items. How would you feel discovering a loved one was manipulating you? Share your thoughts. The irony wasn't lost on me when Amanda arrived the following week with printouts of articles about elderly people falling victim to scams. It happens all the time, Mom, she said, highlighting passages about diminished capacity and financial exploitation. That's why we need to protect your assets, together. She was simultaneously warning me about the very behavior she was exhibiting. I began investigating Amanda's recent lifestyle changes more thoroughly. The vacations to Cabo, the kitchen renovation, the private school for Riley, all while she claimed her husband's business was struggling and they were cutting back. The math didn't add up unless they had another source of funds, or were anticipating one. My suspicions were confirmed beyond doubt when I overheard Amanda on her phone in my garden. She thought I was napping, her voice carrying through the open window as she paced by the roses Robert had planted. Once we handle the sale, we'll have enough for the down payment and renovations, she said. Mom won't know the difference. We'll tell her we got a business loan. I'm thinking by Christmas we can be settled in. Without alerting Amanda to my discoveries, I consulted with my own financial advisor, the same one Robert and I had used for decades. James was surprised to hear from me. Amanda had recently called him claiming to be taking over my financial matters due to cognitive concerns. He'd politely told her he could only discuss my accounts with me or with legal documentation of power of attorney. Robert had taught me about investments early in our marriage. Always understand where your money is, Eleanor, he'd said. Too many women of our generation get left in the dark. Not you. I. We'd studied financial magazines together, made decisions jointly. After his death, I continued managing our portfolio, making modest but steady gains that maintained my comfortable lifestyle. One afternoon, retrieving a bag Amanda had left in her car's back seat, I found a real estate brochure for vacation homes in Sedona. Property values were circled with annotations, figures that eerily matched the appraised values of my major jewelry pieces. The coincidence was too precise to ignore. Amanda's pressure intensified. "Mom, if you're serious about selling any pieces, you should let Jonathan handle it privately. Auction houses take huge commissions, and the paperwork would be overwhelming for you." Each conversation now felt like a chess match where I had to carefully consider my responses while planning several moves ahead. I noticed Amanda constantly checking her phone during our visits, particularly when jewelry or finances came up. Quick texts sent when she thought I wasn't looking, often followed by calls from Greg about urgent business matters that necessitated hushed conversations in my garden. Michael's spring visit added another layer of complexity. He sensed the tension between Amanda and me, but didn't understand its source. I hadn't shared my suspicions yet, wanting irrefutable evidence before potentially damaging their sibling relationship. He did comment on Amanda's new SUV, receiving a vague answer about dealer incentives. The situation escalated when Amanda organized what felt like an intervention, a family meeting about my financial security. She'd invited Michael, who declined due to work, her husband Greg, and even my sister from Florida, who joined by phone. Amanda had prepared a PowerPoint presentation about elderly care costs and asset liquidation strategies, speaking about me in the third person as though I wasn't present. Throughout this uncomfortable meeting, I remained outwardly calm, even agreeable. Inside, I documented each manipulation tactic, each half-truth. Greg occasionally jumped in with comments about how they were just trying to help, while Amanda clicked through slides showing steep downward graphs of jewelry values and real estate markets, data I knew to be selectively presented or outright fabricated. The next morning brought another shock. My home safe, hidden in my closet behind winter clothes, showed signs of tampering. The lock was intact, but the dust pattern I'd deliberately left on the dial had been disturbed. Nothing was missing, but the invasion felt violating in ways I couldn't articulate. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was my life, my home, my autonomy being systematically undermined. I decided to set a deliberate trap. I mentioned to Amanda, and only Amanda, that I was considering selling my sapphire earrings, commenting that they might be quite valuable based on something I'd read online. The earrings were nice, but not exceptional, worth perhaps a few $1,000s. I wanted to track if and how this information traveled. Within 3 days, I had my answer. James, my financial advisor, discreetly provided me with an email exchange between Amanda and an auction contact she'd reached out to. The sapphire earrings were described as potentially worth 5 figures, despite Jonathan's previous assessment of them as colored glass with minimal value. The information leak was confirmed, completing the circle of deception. Were you shocked by my secret? Tell me your reaction. With mounting evidence, I made an appointment with my attorney to review and update my will. Patricia had handled Robert's estate and knew our family dynamics. She listened without judgment as I outlined my concerns and evidence, then helped me strengthen my estate planning to prevent the kind of manipulation I was experiencing. The boundary violations continued to escalate. I returned from a doctor's appointment to find a couple touring my living room, led by a real estate agent with Amanda hovering nearby. "Mom, I thought you'd be gone longer," she said, flustered. "These are the Millers. They're just giving me decorating ideas for updating your space." The couple looked confused, clearly having been told the house was potentially for sale. When I confronted Amanda later about the unauthorized house showing, her response chilled me. "Mom, we discussed this last week. Don't you remember? The doctor mentioned these memory lapses might happen. It's why we agreed I should take a more active role in managing things." She had begun constructing a narrative of cognitive decline that existed only in her descriptions to others. I finally shared the full situation with Michael during a private call, swearing him to secrecy until I was ready to act. His initial disbelief turned to quiet anger as I presented the evidence I'd gathered. "I'm coming for a visit next month," he said. "Whatever you decide to do, I'll support you." With Irene and Thomas's help, I began the process of selling one major piece through legitimate channels, the emerald necklace that had become the centerpiece of Amanda's schemes. The auction house was discreet, the paperwork handled privately through my attorney. Amanda remained completely unaware, still believing the necklace sat in my jewelry box, wrapped in its velvet pouch. Meanwhile, Amanda's pressure tactics escalated. She began involving relatives, friends, even my doctor in her campaign. "Everyone is concerned about you, Mom," she would say, scrolling through supportive texts on her phone. Texts I suspected she had solicited with carefully worded requests. "They all agree this is for the best." I maintained my outwardly acquiescent demeanor while executing my counter-strategy. I would nod thoughtfully at her suggestions, promise to think about it, occasionally agree to small steps that granted me time without ceding actual control. The performance was exhausting, but necessary. Irene helped me document everything: recorded conversations, in states where one-party consent is legal, saved text messages, emails forwarded to a secure account Amanda couldn't access. "Evidence," Irene said firmly. "Always keep evidence." Her practical approach grounded me when emotions threatened to overwhelm my resolve. The final confirmation came unexpectedly. Amanda had left her laptop open while helping me bring in groceries. A glance at the screen revealed an email draft to an auction house. Not Jonathan's private connection, but a legitimate business, inquiring about the process for selling an entire collection of estate jewelry, with an attached inventory that matched my pieces exactly, valued at prices far higher than she had ever mentioned to me. That night, alone in the bedroom I'd shared with Robert for 4 decades, I finally accepted the painful truth. My daughter's financial advice, her concern about my well-being, her offers of help, all masked a calculated plan to exploit what she saw as my vulnerability. The realization brought not just pain, but clarity. I no longer had to question my perceptions or doubt my instincts. With this acceptance came action. I began direct evidence gathering: screenshots of Amanda's communications when possible, recordings of our conversations, detailed notes after each interaction. I built my case methodically, the way Robert had taught me to approach any significant challenge. Amanda, perhaps sensing something had changed, accelerated her timeline. "Mom, we really need to make decisions about your jewelry before the holiday market slump," she said during her next visit. "Jonathan says collectors are cutting back spending, and values could drop by 30% after Halloween." The manufactured urgency was yet another tactic, one that might have worked had I not been forewarned. 2 days before the planned family dinner, where Amanda intended to finalize her jewelry collection plans, I received confirmation of the emerald necklace sale. The final hammer price, just over $1 million, exceeded even Thomas's optimistic valuation. The funds were securely transferred to an account only I could access, with proper taxes set aside and the remainder invested according to James's conservative recommendations. Amanda arranged an elaborate dinner at my home, ostensibly to celebrate an early Thanksgiving since Michael would miss the actual holiday due to work travel, a detail I knew to be false from my private conversations with him. She arrived early to prepare, bringing groceries and decorations with an almost manic energy, arranging place settings with unusual precision. As the designated evening approached, I carefully prepared for the confrontation. My evidence was organized, copies secured with my attorney. I had rehearsed what I would say, anticipating various reactions and preparing responses. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth and consequences, about reclaiming my agency. Michael arrived the day before the dinner, earlier than Amanda expected. "Business wrapped up sooner than anticipated," he told her blandly when she expressed surprise at finding him already settled in the guest room. The slight narrowing of her eyes told me his presence disrupted some aspect of her plan. For the dinner, I chose my outfit carefully. A blue dress Robert had always loved, simple pearl earrings, and a specially commissioned pendant. The silver locket appeared to be a decorative jewelry box, a conversation piece that would serve its purpose when the moment came. I felt calm, prepared, even as nervousness fluttered at the edges of my resolve. Amanda began the dinner with solicitous attention, serving my favorite foods, refilling my water glass unnecessarily often, and peppering the conversation with references to my forgetfulness and confusion about financial matters. Each comment laid groundwork for what would come later, establishing a narrative for Michael's benefit. "Mom's been having some cognitive concerns," she said while serving dessert, her voice pitched with practiced concern. The doctor thinks we should simplify her affairs. The jewelry collection especially, it's becoming a burden to maintain and insure. We've discussed liquidating it with a family friend who specializes in estate sales. Greg nodded along, adding, "We've had some business setbacks recently, so we understand financial pressure. The timing works out. We can help Eleanor simplify while getting back on our feet. Family supporting family." The connection was barely disguised, the implication clear. I watched Amanda's body language as she presented Jonathan's assessments of my collection, noting how she emphasized the lower values when addressing me directly, while her notes contained much higher figures. The discrepancy was no longer surprising, just confirmation of what I already knew. The moment that truly revealed everything was when Greg casually mentioned the emerald necklace. That green necklace especially, the one from Dad's family, might fetch enough to cover several months of memory care if needed down the road. Amanda shot him a warning look, clearly having wanted to approach that topic more delicately. Michael, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "That necklace has been appraised before, hasn't it, Mom? I remember Dad mentioning its value." His question was innocent-sounding but deliberate, opening the door exactly as we had discussed. Amanda quickly interceded. "Those old appraisals are obsolete. The market has changed dramatically, especially for colored stones. Jonathan says emeralds that size and quality might bring a few thousand at most in today's market." Her certainty was absolute, her tone leaving no room for debate. I allowed silence to fill the room after her pronouncement, watching as Amanda grew increasingly uncomfortable with my lack of response. She filled the gap with more justifications, more explanations of market conditions and elderly care costs, digging herself deeper with each sentence. Finally, she directly stated her plan. "I've made arrangements with Jonathan to handle the entire collection. He'll give us, you, a fair price, Mom, without all the fees and complications of traditional auction houses. I can handle all the paperwork. You won't need to worry about anything." I took a sip of water, set down my glass carefully, and asked a simple question. "What do you think the emerald necklace is actually worth, Amanda? The one with the Colombian stones and Tiffany setting?" Amanda's practiced sympathy didn't waver. "Like I said, Mom, a few thousand at most. Jonathan was very clear about that. These older pieces just don't hold value like they used to." Greg nodded along, adding, "Insurance costs alone probably outweigh its worth." That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I reached into my purse and removed an envelope, placing it on the table between us. "That's interesting," I said calmly, "because the auction house that sold it last week for just over $1 million seems to disagree." Amanda's face froze. Her hand, reaching for her water glass, stopped midair. For several seconds, she didn't even appear to breathe. Greg's mouth opened slightly, then closed without producing sound. Michael sat back in his chair, watching them both with quiet satisfaction. They never saw it coming. "Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story." Amanda recovered first, her voice jumping an octave. "What are you talking about? That's impossible. The necklace is in your jewelry box upstairs." She looked genuinely bewildered, her carefully constructed reality crumbling visibly. "Is it?" I asked, opening the envelope and sliding out the auction documentation, complete with photographs, authentication certificates, and final sale confirmation. Because according to Christaby's auction house, it was sold to a private collector last Tuesday. The funds have already been transferred to my account and invested appropriately. Amanda's attempted recovery was painful to watch. "Mom, I was just trying to protect you. There are so many scams targeting elderly people. I wanted to handle everything properly through Jonathan, someone we could trust." Her desperation was evident, eyes darting between the documentation and my face. "Jonathan, who told me my grandmother's platinum and diamond bracelet was costume jewelry worth maybe $100, I countered, sliding another document across the table. A certified appraisal putting that same bracelet at $50,000. "Or were you referring to these private conversations with other dealers?" I added another page, screenshots of emails where Amanda had researched the true values extensively. Michael's quiet presence provided strength as I continued methodically exposing the scheme. He occasionally nodded encouragement, but let this be my moment. my reclamation of power that had never actually left me, only been temporarily obscured by others' assumptions. "I know about the Sedona house," I said quietly, watching Amanda's face pale further. "The one you plan to buy with the proceeds from my worthless jewelry. The down payment that matches almost exactly what Jonathan claimed my entire collection was worth." Greg attempted to interject, claiming they'd been exploring options for a family vacation home everyone could enjoy, inadvertently revealing more of their plans in his fumbling explanation. "I've managed our family finances for 45 years, I continued, my voice growing stronger. "Your father trusted my judgment with every investment, every purchase, every decision. I've maintained and grown my portfolio since his death. I understand compounding interest, diversification, and market fluctuations." Amanda stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Not as an elderly mother to be managed, but as a woman who had been testing her, observing her, and gathering evidence of her deception for months. "Your expert Jonathan never completed the gemology certification he claims to have. His primary occupation is as a bartender at Greg's golf club. The Wilsons weren't getting decorating ideas. They thought my house was for sale because you told them it was. And your business troubles didn't prevent you from buying a $30,000 purse last month." Each revelation landed like a physical blow. Amanda's carefully constructed narrative collapsed completely, leaving her speechless for perhaps the first time in her adult life. Michael's expression showed both satisfaction at the truth emerging and sadness that it had been necessary. I slid one final document across the table. New estate planning papers my attorney had prepared. "I've updated my will and created an irrevocable trust for my assets. Nothing can be accessed without multiple trustees' approval, including Irene and my attorney Patricia. I've also appointed Michael as my healthcare proxy, should legitimate cognitive issues ever arise." Amanda's attempt to reframe her actions came as expected. "You're completely misunderstanding everything, Mom," she said, tears forming. "I was trying to simplify your life, protect you from making mistakes with these complicated financial matters. You're twisting everything." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and delivered the most painful truth of all. "The jewelry has value, Amanda. But what you tried to take from me was worth far more. My autonomy, my dignity, my trust. That's the real theft I can't forgive yet." Michael finally spoke directly to his sister. "This ends now, Amanda. No more helping with finances, no more unauthorized visitors, no more narratives about memory issues or confusion. Mom is competent, capable, and now forewarned." Amanda's breakdown was uncomfortable to witness. Tears, recriminations, attempts to shift blame, and finally a defeated slump in her chair as she realized the completeness of her exposure. Greg suggested they leave, practically pulling Amanda toward the door as she alternated between apologies and justifications. After they left, I established clear new rules. Amanda could visit, but never alone. No more discussions of my finances, property, or belongings without my attorney present. No access to my home when I wasn't there. The boundaries were non-negotiable, the consequences for violation explicit. The $1 million proceeds from the emerald necklace, which Robert would have wanted me to enjoy rather than preserve as a symbol, were reinvested primarily in a balanced portfolio. I also fulfilled a long-delayed dream of traveling to Italy, where Robert and I had always planned to celebrate our 50th anniversary, before cancer made that impossible. In the following months, Amanda made tentative efforts to repair our relationship. She arrived for occasional visits with small gifts and careful conversation that never strayed into financial territory. The damage remained, a crack in the foundation that might eventually stabilize but would never completely disappear. I loved my daughter despite everything. The maternal bond stretched thin, but never fully broken. But love no longer meant blind trust or sacrifice of my own interests. I could hold both the pain of her betrayal and the hope for eventual healing simultaneously, a complexity Amanda had never credited me with managing. Irene and I celebrated my victory with a champagne toast on my patio. "To underestimated women," she said, raising her glass with arthritic fingers adorned with meaningful but not valuable rings. "May we always exceed expectations." My home security now included cameras and new locks, not from fear of strangers, but from awareness of insiders' capacity for betrayal. My financial arrangements included multiple layers of protection, not because I couldn't manage alone, but because I recognized the value of allied oversight. Several weeks after the confrontation, a letter arrived from Amanda. Unlike her texts and calls, this was handwritten, 5 pages of reflection that seemed genuinely introspective rather than strategically apologetic. She acknowledged the wrongness of her actions without qualification, a first step that surprised me with its apparent sincerity. Reading her words brought complicated emotions: relief at her acknowledgement, lingering hurt from the betrayal, cautious hope for eventual reconciliation. I didn't respond immediately, allowing myself time to process rather than react. The luxury of thoughtful consideration was itself a form of reclaimed power. I began wearing my remaining jewelry with renewed appreciation, not just for its monetary value, but for the memories each piece contained. The diamond earrings from our anniversary in Paris, the pearl necklace worn to each child's graduation, each represented a moment with Robert, a life well lived despite its premature shortening. James, my financial advisor, now met with me quarterly, his manner notably different after witnessing my handling of Amanda's scheme. Gone was the slight condescension, the simplified explanations. He brought complex investment options, detailed market analyses, treating me as the knowledgeable client I had always been. The next family gathering, Michael's birthday celebration, showed visibly shifted power dynamics. Amanda was subdued, cautious in my presence. Greg avoided financial topics entirely. Most tellingly, they deferred to my preferences about everything from seating arrangements to serving time, a reversal of their previous controlling approach. With some of the proceeds from the emerald necklace, I established a small scholarship at the local community college for women returning to education after raising families. Robert would have approved. He always believed education was the most valuable investment possible. My conversations with Michael evolved as well. He shared his initial disbelief at my suspicions, followed by shock at the evidence. "I never thought Amanda could do something like that," he admitted. "It makes me question every interaction we've had for years." The ripple effects of broken trust extended beyond just my relationship with Amanda. Looking back, I recognized signs I'd initially missed or dismissed. Amanda's dismissive tone when I expressed opinions about investments, her constant references to my generation, not understanding modern finances, her urgent timelines that prevented thoughtful consideration, lessons painfully learned but valuable nonetheless. Our final family dinner of that difficult year was tentatively peaceful. Amanda brought a homemade dish rather than catering. She asked about my trip to Italy without attempting to control the conversation. Small steps toward a new relationship, based on reality rather than exploitation. The emerald necklace was never mentioned, its absence hanging between us like a ghostly reminder. As I reflected on the year's events from Robert's favorite chair, I realized that the true value of our confrontation wasn't financial. The $1 million sale mattered less than the reclamation of my narrative, the acknowledgement of my competence, wisdom, and agency that Amanda had attempted to erase. I emptied my jewelry box that evening, examining each remaining piece. Some I would eventually sell, on my terms, at fair market value, for my own purposes. Others I would keep for their emotional significance. The box itself, which had become such a contentious symbol, I would give to Irene's granddaughter, who admired its craftsmanship. There is unique freedom in being underestimated. While painful, it provided the cover I needed to gather evidence and prepare my response. Amanda expected a confused, compliant elderly mother. She found instead the woman who had managed family finances for decades, who recognized manipulation, who valued herself enough to demand honesty. The true wealth in my life was never in emeralds or diamonds, platinum or gold. It resided in wisdom earned through decades of experience, in friendships like Irene's built on honest appreciation, in my own resilience when facing betrayal from an unexpected source. To those watching who've been dismissed, underestimated, or manipulated, trust yourself. That quiet voice inside saying something isn't right? Listen to it. Your experience and wisdom matter. Your age doesn't diminish your competence or autonomy. My daughter thought I was confused about my jewelry's worth. She was wrong about the jewelry. And about me. The $1 million from that emerald necklace wasn't just financial security. It was reclaiming my power. Every document I signed, every boundary I established, every truth I spoke aloud was another piece of myself returned. I still look at the empty space in my jewelry box where the emerald necklace once rested. I don't regret its sale. Robert would have approved of my using its value to secure my independence rather than letting it become a tool for manipulation. The relationship with my daughter remains complicated. Trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly, if at all. But I've discovered unexpected strength in this chapter of life. Not despite my age, but because of it. Years of experience taught me to recognize deception, even when disguised as concern. They gave me patience to gather evidence rather than react emotionally. I sometimes wonder if my story is as uncommon as I once thought. How many other widows or elderly parents face similar manipulation from those they should be able to trust? How many lack the resources or support to protect themselves? Have you ever been underestimated and proved someone wrong? I'd love to hear your story.